This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. There was a time when the story I'm about to tell you would have potentially gotten me ostracized from the general public, ridiculed, perhaps openly, for my naivete or, at the very least, aggressively accused of having an overactive imagination. But times have changed, and now it's no big deal to admit, even for a skeptic like me, that I totally saw a UFO in Los Angeles when I was 22 years old. I mean it. Decades later, and I'm back living in roughly the same neighborhood, and I drive by the spot I was standing in when I saw it at least a few times a week. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was the height of a scorching summer in the San Fernando Valley, and to keep cool, I would push my workouts to later in the day, especially the days I would take my runs. So there I was, at the corner of Carpenter Avenue and Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, on the south side of the street, facing west into the setting sun. I was finished with my run, and it was getting dark. I'll call it late twilight. Cars wouldn't have their headlights on yet, but they would in probably 5 or 10 minutes. So I started walking south on Carpenter, which is up a pretty steep hill, when I turned around and looked up. Now, why did I look up? Mostly out of habit. I was living about a block south of Ventura Boulevard and had learned that when it gets super windy in the valley, Burbank Airport, which is about 5 miles to the northeast, changes their approach for incoming aircraft. That alternate approach has commercial planes tracking directly over Ventura Boulevard for several miles. Now, it had been windy that day, and I wanted to check if aircraft were still diverting to the alternate approach. So I looked up, over my right shoulder, turning to my right in a northwesterly direction. Yes, into the setting sun that was nearly below the horizon. The sun was actually completely obscured by the buildings, but not fully set below the horizon. And that's when I saw it. And it was close. Pretty much directly over Ventura, maybe a block north, and low, very low, 100 feet at the most. The strangest thing about it was that it was completely silent. And that's what I think gives things like this most of their ability to stay hidden. No noise, nothing to command your attention. I was just plane spotting. My attention on the sky was purely coincidental. But there it was, moving slowly, very slowly, due west, the shape. It had the dimensions of a phone booth, only larger. Basically a long, skinny rectangle, grayish-brown, beautifully camouflaged against the fading twilight. I remember so clearly the smooth sides dully reflecting the orange and pink of the sunset, colors I couldn't see from street level, but were still hitting objects at a higher elevation. And the strangest thing of all was how it was moving. It was slowly rotating on its long axis like a drill bit as it moved through the muggy California night. But remember, eerily silent. I stared open-mouthed as the craft lazily spun its way to the west until it became obscured by the commercial buildings along the boulevard. Then I had to make a decision. Do I run after it? Sure, it was going much faster than I could run, but not so much that it would have been fruitless. I could have gotten at least another minute or two of viewing time. Instead, I opted to try and get someone else to see it, to have another witness to this incredible craft that had just appeared flying low over the valley. I sprinted to my apartment building, knocked on my neighbor's door. I was super excited, an emotional level that my neighbor didn't appreciate. But when I told him there was a UFO over Ventura Boulevard, he followed me out the door immediately. When we got to the corner, darkness had completely fallen and the craft was nowhere to be seen. The neighbor didn't believe me, and I don't blame him. I think he accused me of being high, and I never told anyone else about it until right now. So why am I sharing this? Well, partially because I'm going to be introducing some lighter fare for these summer months as I research and write a new 8-part series of The Devil Within that will drop in the fall, and partly in honor of the news that broke today out of Colorado about what's called a mass UFO sighting. That's when several people all witnessed the same event and describe what they saw in ways that are incredibly consistent. So, I figured I'd share my UFO story and then give you guys a countdown of the top 10 UFO sightings in history. I know, kind of off topic for this podcast, but since reports from antiquity about strange objects in the sky have been attributed to everything from aliens to secret government programs, and even to angels and demons battling in the sky for dominion over our world, I figured you guys might appreciate it. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to the top 10 UFO sightings from history. So just to kind of plant a flag here, I'm only including what's considered modern sightings in this list. To be sure, there are dozens of reported UFO encounters that date back to the ancient Egyptians. No shit. But it's impossible to corroborate stuff like that. First of all, they're mostly translations from dead languages. For example, the earliest known alleged sighting is from a carved stone monument in Egypt from 1450 BC. Then there are numerous reports from ancient Rome, through Europe in the Middle Ages, and beginning in the Americas in the 19th century. But again, these are mostly unsubstantiated claims that have grown over the centuries with no way of investigating their legitimacy. So I decided, apart from my own story, that I'll stick with accounts that involve more than one person and generally have some kind of evidence to back up the claim. Number 10. This is the sighting that's generally accepted as the first truly unexplained, widely witnessed event, and it occurred in Washington State on June 24th, 1947. A man named Kenneth Arnold was piloting his small plane over southern Washington when he spotted several shiny objects reflecting sunlight off the left side of his aircraft. Arnold was able to calculate their size and speed and determined that these 9 objects, flying in formation, were each roughly the size of a commercial airliner and traveling at a speed of 1,700 miles per hour. That's more than 3 times the top speed of our most advanced aircraft at that time. When Arnold shared his story, the local press were first to use the moniker, quote, flying saucer, to describe the objects he witnessed. And much to Arnold's relief, several people came forward claiming to have witnessed similar objects in the sky at the same time in the same area. Reliable witnesses, with a lot to lose if they were suspected of lying. But the coup de grace for this story came less than 3 weeks later, when a man 1,000 miles to the southeast saw the same flying discs in the sky over Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he was able to snap a picture. It was never determined what Kenneth Arnold and others saw that day in 1947. Number 9. About an hour north of New York City is a region called the Hudson Valley. It's a beautiful part of the country with rolling green hills, dense forests, and the mighty Hudson River cutting its way through the countryside on its journey to the Atlantic. It was over this majestic landscape in March of 1983 that dozens of residents across 4 Hudson Valley counties reported seeing the exact same thing. Large objects, roughly 100 yards long, flying in formation, either a long V formation or in a circle. Credible reports were coming from police officers, other pilots in the sky, and amateur UFO hunters who, try as they might, were unable to snap pictures of the mysterious crafts. Things got so tense that one night, as the objects hovered over the Indian Point nuclear power plant, security for the plant were ordered to arm themselves with shotguns and to protect the nuclear facility with deadly force if any of the objects landed nearby and the plant came under attack. These sightings occurred on a regular basis for more than a year, abruptly ending in June of 1984. Number 8. Born in 1918, Gösta Karlsson was a Swedish multimillionaire entrepreneur who was among the first to experiment with bee pollen as a natural remedy to treat a host of human ailments. He started a company selling bee pollen extract that, along with the soft promise of across-the-board wellness, made him tons of money. He quickly became a very popular businessman in his home country, but it wasn't until the 1970s, well into his 50s and fabulously successful, that Carlson would finally divulge his secret. He had derived his business inspiration from an encounter with not only a spacecraft, but also with the aliens who were flying it. It was a May evening in 1946 when 28-year-old Gosta was walking home from the beach. His route would take him through a forest that he was very familiar with, and it was here, in a small clearing in that forest, that Carlson would encounter a fully intact alien spacecraft. He described it as a disc resting on retractable legs in front and a fin-like structure attached to the belly of the craft. Carlson claims to have fully interacted with the aliens, although they seemed very reluctant to do so. The aliens were described as humanoid, wearing full white flight suits and using earplugs. Once the craft left, Carlson quickly inspected the landing site and collected whatever artifacts he could, as well as creating sketches immediately, before he forgot any details, to turn into law enforcement. For the rest of the month of May, Carlson reported having significantly strange dreams where he insisted that the alien pilot was speaking to him through his dreams. Incredibly, when Carlson finally revealed the truth about that day in May, he gave full credit to his successful business ideas to the dreams where he was visited by that alien pilot. Oh, and those sketches he made from memory? Today, there proudly stands a concrete version of the craft Carlson saw that night, in the exact spot he came upon it, based entirely upon those contemporaneous drawings. The plaque that stands along the monument reads, quote, "A UFO landed and took off at this location on May 18, 1946. All cement markings are cast exactly according to existing impressions in the ground and according to the dimensional sketch which an eyewitness to the event drew up on May 19, 1946. Number 7. For a period lasting 6 months, from November of 1989 to April of 1990, thousands of people in Belgium witnessed triangular-shaped crafts over various parts of the country. Now, let's remember for a moment what was going on in Europe during that time. Less than 500 miles to the east of Belgium, in Berlin, Germany, communism was unraveling. The Berlin Wall came down in early November, the latest in a series of mostly nonviolent uprisings sweeping across Eastern Europe. Within 2 years, the Soviet Union would disintegrate, throwing global politics into a frenzy of transition, confusion, and fear. The root of that fear was the question of who would be in control of the massive Soviet military arsenal, especially their nuclear weapons. Which brings us back to Belgium and all of these terrifying, unknown, non-responsive UFOs crisscrossing the skies above major cities and countryside alike. On several occasions, the Belgian military was able to track these objects with radar. These sightings reached a fever pitch in March of 1990, when more than 13,000 witnesses reported seeing several of these triangular crafts. The situation became so dire that 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s were scrambled to intercept the objects as they approached the capital city of Brussels from the southeast. 9 different attempts to intercept were made by the jet fighters, but they were unsuccessful, all while spectators below watched in awe. The closest the pilots came to interception were several official radar locks, with one specific instance of a pilot witnessing one of the crafts accelerating from around 100 miles per hour to over 1,000 miles per hour, while descending more than 5,000 feet, all in a matter of seconds. In a rare public statement regarding military operations, a Belgian major general, whose name I'm not able to pronounce, issued the following release to the press. The Belgian UFO wave was exceptional, and the Air Force could not identify the nature, origin, and intentions of the reported phenomena. Number 6. This one hits close to home. Separating central New Jersey from New York City's Staten Island is a narrow strait called the Arthur Kill Waterway. There are two bridges that span that waterway connecting New York and New Jersey, the Goethals Bridge to the north and the Outer Bridge crossing to the south. Running parallel to the coast until it cuts inland near Port Reading is the New Jersey Turnpike. It was on this majestic strip of asphalt, okay, maybe I'm a little homesick, but it was here that hundreds of people, either driving to or returning from Atlantic City. I mean, come on, why else would you be on the turnpike after midnight on a Friday in summer? It was here on July 14th, 2001, that hundreds of people witnessed strange orange and yellow lights flying in formation over that narrow Arrow Kill waterway. Over that narrow Arthur Kill waterway. It was such an unusual and unsettling sight that dozens of cars pulled over to get a better look, and one of these people was a lieutenant from the nearby Carteret, New Jersey police force. There were witness reports from up north on the George Washington Bridge on the Jersey side in Fort Lee, all the way to the Throgs Neck Bridge out on Long Island. Despite all the sightings and corroboration, air traffic control at nearby Newark International Airport even confirmed there were no unusual traffic patterns on the 14th. Despite all that, the only thing stranger than the mysterious objects in the sky above New Jersey is the explanation. There isn't one. It's been more than 20 years, and still, no one knows what the hell was going on. Thanks for listening. I'll finish the countdown on the next episode. And don't be shy. Let me know your UFO story in the comments. And be sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You could also check out our socials at The Devil Within Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, stay safe out there. The Devil Within is a Cloud 10 Media production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. Written and produced by Brandon Morgan. Executive produced by Sim Sarna. Our post-production supervisor is Bruce Whitkin, who also provided original music for this episode. For The Devil Within, I'm your host, Brandon Morgan.